That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and making this your podcast or your live stream of choice. I got to be honest with you, it always feels good to actually be live. Who have followed this channel for a while, sometimes you know that I will pre-record and then drop in as a premiere, and then sometimes I can hang out in the chat. But this one, I decided to roll live. I was going to do a better, more cut introduction for the show, as I love to do, but time is just not on my side. So what I am going to do today is update you guys on a story. And let me reinforce when I say how motivating it is when I get the comments in this YouTube channel on these videos that a lot of you, more than I would have ever expected, don't use social media, and that you get your updates from me through this channel. That is so motivating to me. And if that is true and you haven't posted it yet, do it on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, I am blasting this out elsewhere, but please feel free to log in on YouTube. That is where the chat room is hopping the most on these. www.theblackvault.com/live. That will bounce you to YouTube, and then you'll be able to room. There are quite a few hundred at this point in there already, and it grows throughout the stream. So I'll do my best to watch that chat throughout. Not sure if I'm going to open up the phone lines today or how long I can stay on, but like I said, wanted to update you guys on a very cool story, which is all about NASA and the UAP Task Force. Now, this involves a story that I published on Friday. It was, when did I publish this? Yesterday, forgive me. Yesterday, what was that date? The 21st. So apologies, I'm totally in a time warp. I had done the video for the two other articles, so I'm kind of losing track. But that being said, yesterday dropped this article, NASA and the UAP Task Force, and essentially here's the I would say the headline. And essentially the headline is this, that shortly after the UAP Task Force was officially established and acknowledged, what happened was they reached out to NASA, and at the UAP Task Force's request said, NASA, we want to brief you on UAPs. And we'll get more into those details in a few moments. But that's the story. And why is that important? Because a lot of people understood the importance when I published this, but there were some that didn't. And this goes to, I would say, very much a big part of the UAP Task Force's mission. And also it's showing how it goes beyond that mission. And we'll get into all of that. First, I want to start with a short video. It's only about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. But I want to show you guys the motivation for creating the FOIA cases that I did. And, excuse me, essentially where I picked up on, hey, let's file these cases and figure out what more to the story is there. And this video was that motivation. So I want to play it for you guys, just for those who are getting into the FOIA and you know, potentially going to be filing some requests. This is the stuff you look out for. So I hope this works good. I hope the audio's good. Tell me in the chat room. And Matthew Riot, thank you very, very much for that. Let me go ahead and play this video.
To NASA's work identifying extraterrestrial life.
You want me to talk about that?
Or anyone. Dr. Z.
Well, I just want you to know, what you have seen on the TV recently, on the Navy films, I had known about this in my former capacity in Intel and the Armed Services Committee. And I've talked to those pilots, and they think it's real. So I had talked to Thomas, Dr. Z, about what specifically we could do from a science perspective, in addition to an intel perspective, to try to bring any additional light to this. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm happy to. In the realm of science, we're all about unidentified issues and objects and whatever before. That's what we do. We find something with our observatories, looking at the sky, looking at the Earth, and we go analyze it. We have history is full of examples of things that were identified or were referred to as UFOs, some types of clouds, phenomena, weather phenomena that way. And for me, I personally think that as we look at the origin of life in other worlds and look at really what we, especially at the molecular, and bacterial level, which is what we're really using the tools of science for, the kind of questions that focus on life elsewhere are very much in the realm of what we do, using the tools of science. So we will do whatever we can to move our understanding forward. In many cases, all I want to just say, what we learned so far in the last few decades is people tend to underestimate nature. Nature is an amazing place where a lot of miracles happen. Once we understand it's like, why didn't we think of that? But the point is, there's amazing science out there that remains to be discovered. We're committed to continue to do that, especially as we take new tools, whether it's James Webb, whether it's the Dragonfly, other missions to look at life in other worlds.
All right, so that's the video. The audio, that was the source. I know I saw a comment. I'm glad it came through. I should have prefaced it with the audio is just bad on that video. That was the best audio of that press conference. But what I wanted to point out with that video is, number one, show some context. But number two, these are the types of things that you want to look out for. These are the types of things as a requester through FOIA and investigator, you pick up on the minutia of what's going on, who is saying what, and then you start, you start, well, I lost my screen there. Forgive me. You start looking for those types of hints and clues. And Dr. Z was a clue. So was Bill Nelson. And by the way, I've got open requests for him. So that will be a video, I'm sure, for another day. But Dr. Z's request that I filed on his emails to search through and figure out what he was talking about is the motivation that's the motivation, that video right there. So that's why I wanted to show you. You always look for the little things to pick up on, because if I just sent a request to NASA and said, "Give me everything you got on UAPs," that would never come up. It just wouldn't. And this was the FOIA response that came in a couple of days ago. It was late last week, and I was finishing up those two other stories, and that I had dropped on Friday. And I kid you not, I was trying to get the second story done, and all of a sudden my email box goes off for the 50,000th time of the day, and I saw NASA FOIA from the corner of my eye, opened it, and this is what it was. And I went, you got to be kidding me, because this is very cool when this came in. So this is how the breakdown worked. There were 15 pages that were released in part, 2 of which were denied in full, 0 of which were released in full, meaning no redactions. Most had redactions. And so that is the breakdown of what came in. And I do want to give a special thanks to Jazz for that support here during the live show. If John went back and analyzed The Wizard of Oz, he could find the name of Munchkins to FOIA and come up with a damn document, and it would be real. Jazz, as always, you're a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you for that support. You are one of my favorite people to interact with on not only UFO Twitter, but just in general. So thank you for being here and that support. And with that, wow, right behind King Wood 43. Thank you for that as well. So this particular breakdown here shows you what I got. It came in a zip file. You can see that down here. I just wanted to kind of show you guys how it's broken down. And I've gotten these a lot. Sometimes you get like 10 or 12 files. Other times you get like 1,000. No kidding. And you have to go through one by one by one. This is how they're broken down. You just look for the gems. And I'll go through a couple documents, but the majority of these were not very exciting. A lot of FOIA research is not all glitz and glamour. I mean, you're looking for the diamond in the rough, and here's your rough. Thankfully, it wasn't a whole lot of rough, and so I kind of went down and started going through. And as I was quickly on Friday, again, trying to finish that article, came across this email. It was sent September 13th, 2020. Now, this is, if you do the math, just about a month after the UAP Task Force was officially established and acknowledged by the DoD. We can argue that it was in, operation long prior, but that was the official acknowledgement in 2020. All these different people are on here, but the key people here is this gentleman right here, Mike Gold. He's from the Office of International Interagency Relations, or OIIR. That's what you see up here. And the OIIR will send out a weekly update to the NASA administrator at the time. It was James Bridenstine, and then a bunch of other people, which you can see here on your screen. I won't go through all of them, but hidden within here would be Dr. Z, and that is why it came up during this request that I asked for all of Dr. Z's emails with certain keywords, including unidentified aerial. I don't say phenomena, so just do unidentified aerial or phenomenon. That way it always catches it. Unidentified flying, same reasoning. It can be unidentified flying, whatever. And I had select other keywords as well. So I started reading through this, and towards the end of this 2-page email, this was the kicker. This was the trigger on my FOIA request. Briefing on activities of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, or UAPTF. At the request of the UAPTF, Joel Montalbano, Margaret Kiefer, Suzanne Gillen, and I, meaning Mike Gold, will receive a briefing on activities of the task force via secure, that's video teleconference. Per a public announcement, on August 4th, 2020, Deputy Secretary of Defense David Norquist approved the establishment of the UAPTF. The Department of the Navy, under the cognizance of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, leads the UAPTF. Additional information can be provided on the appropriate system. Now, I would imagine that would be more classified communications on the appropriate system, so they would use that kind of a channel to then go into the details of whatever this briefing is. Now, this is the part where I don't speculate as much in an article. Rather, I just try and do it straightforward, give you guys the facts, the documents. This is the story, and dig in a little bit deeper. But the question mark here is, why would the UAPTF reach out to NASA and go, okay, NASA, we want to brief you on UAPs? Because NASA didn't ask. The classified briefings that we're aware of are those with either senators or the part of the committees, the staffers, or even the White House. One journalist reported when the report was coming out, did not confirm it was with the president, but rather the White House. So that could just be the office of the president. I think it's the Office of the Science and Technology, part of the office of the White House, or Office of the President, I should say. And yeah, it does get very, very confusing with those presidential records, but that is an office of the president. So, and they have a Science and Technology subdivision. So I'm guessing that's who it was with. But regardless, that's what the UAPTF does. They brief on request, and they do these investigations, and obviously a lot is still unknown about what's going on. So why NASA? And that was kind of a little bit of a question mark for me, that they would essentially reach out. I say why NASA because when you go back to the original press release on the mission of the UAP Task Force, it says this: the mission of the task force is to detect, analyze, and catalog UAPs that could potentially pose a threat to U.S. national security. As DoD has stated previously, the safety of our personnel and the security of our operations are of paramount concern. The Department of Defense and the military departments take any incursions by unauthorized aircraft into our training ranges or designated airspace very seriously and examine each report. That includes examinations of incursions that are initially reported as UAP when the observer cannot immediately identify what he or she is observing. Now, we've gone over that a couple times on this channel. That's pretty much language you guys have memorized at this point. But my whole point with reading that to you is it seems like NASA would be out of the cognizance of the UAP Task Force. Essentially, NASA operates well above where the UAPTF is saying that they were focusing, which was above DoD airspace and military training and ranges and so on. That's essentially a line that they have maintained for quite some time. Now, don't worry. You might be thinking, well, NASA has instruments. Maybe they're catching them. I'll get into that, and that's probably the most logical answer with this. I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. But again, I wanted to kind of lay that groundwork. These are the 4 people that were scheduled to up I'm drawing a blank here, to appear at the classified UAPTF briefing on UFOs. And so they were scheduled to take part in that. And let me dig a little bit deeper into those four names. Mike Gold, we've already gone over. He was the associate administrator of that OIIR office that wrote that original email. I mentioned Joe Montalbano. He's probably the most intriguing inclusion in this briefing because he's the International Space Station Program Manager. Now, that may lead into the instrumentation that NASA has that may play a role in UAP investigations. So put a pin in that. But that to me is one of the more intriguing people, or at least at first glance. And I'll get into that in just the next slide. Margaret Kiefer, she was the director of the Export Control and Interagency Liaison Division. And Suzanne Gillen, she was the former associate administrator for legislative affairs. So we're probably talking about, her communication with Congress, the Senate, trying to get money, so on and so forth. So those were the four that were attending this briefing. At first glance, the ISS program manager really stuck out to me until I started digging into everybody a little bit closer, and Mike Gold became even more intriguing when you look at his background. From February of 2003 to April of 2016, he was the director of DC operations and business growth for Bigelow Aerospace. Now, for those who don't know, Bigelow Aerospace had a subsidiary called BASS. BASS was the one that was awarded a contract through the Defense Intelligence Agency way back in 2008. It's believed this was kind of the beginning days of what we all know as ATIP now. And there's a lot of controversy about this and a lot of speculation, none of which really has a whole lot of official evidence yet to confirm or deny that they were involved in all this paranormal research at Skinwalker Ranch and potentially beyond. What we do know is that OSAP created those 38 reports, also talked about on this channel. But again, that led to the ATIP program that we more so associate with today, and Luis Elizondo's story, and so on. So that's what he did from 2003 to 2016. That is a very long time to spend with Bigelow. And we know that OSAP was from 2008 to at least 2010. And the money dried up for that whole umbrella program known as ATIP in 2012. Officially, it's a mystery, and this is another video entirely, how long Bigelow Aerospace stayed on after they delivered those reports. So it looks like they got 2 years and likely fell off, and then it got transferred over to OSD, where Luis Elizondo was. But Hal Puthoff, when he gave me a statement, essentially was saying that he was still involved after it got transferred back. I had followed up and tried to confirm that because I do think that's interesting. He would not. He did not return the request for commenting on that aspect. So regardless, there's like a 2-year gap, 2010 to 2012, with Bigelow Aerospace's involvement, and then fast forward to Luis Elizondo, ATIP, and the story we know today. Well, again, Mike Gold, the guy that's working for NASA at this point, he has since moved on to the private sector, but he was with Bigelow and Bass through those OSAP days, and he was right smack dab in D.C. So did he play a role in that? Did he have a hand in orchestrating the money? Who knows? I don't know. I reached out to him. I did not put this in the article, to his now private contractor job or private corporation job, I should say. And it's irrelevant. It's in the same industry as this. I don't want to place it. I'm sure you guys can find it. But regardless, I do want to make sure that this guy's, let's respect his privacy is where I'm going with this. I did reach out for the sake of the story, but I did not hound him. I did not get a response. And so I wanted to just leave it at that. I left that out of the story because, again, I just didn't want to blast it out there. This guy works here now. It's all hound on him. That's not what I wanted to do. So let's respect his privacy, but he does have a heck of a history here, and it was a very weird coincidence. What does that all mean? Well, I don't know. It could just be very much a coincidence. It's the aerospace industry. Maybe it was just a coincidence he worked for Bigelow, and a coincidence that he was there during the Bass days and OSAP days. And a coincidence that he was the guy that was showing up and appearing at a classified UAP briefing at the request of the task force. Who knows? We'll let you guys all decide. You got an idea? Put it down there in the comments. Why do you think he was there? Pure coincidence? That's what my gut says. My gut says that it was coincidence, but hey, there was too much there to not point out to you guys. Joel Montalbano, he was that program manager for the ISS. So again, going back to those instrumentation panels and equipment and everything on the space station, we know that they do a lot of environmental research. We know that they've got cameras pointed all over the place. They got sensors, they got instruments. They're doing environmental studies up there. They're doing all sorts of stuff. Really cool stuff, by the way. So would one of those sensors be of interest to the DoD? So let's say over a base in New Mexico, there's a UAP encounter. Could one of the ISS sensors or cameras or whatever pick that up? So is that why the UAPTF reached out and says, okay, NASA, we want to work with you. Here's a briefing. Or did they just say, look, this is all we got. So you guys got anything? Or it's aliens. Do you guys have proof too? You know, I mean, it's anybody's guess at this point. But what we do know is it was classified and nobody's talking. I'll get into the official government stance in a moment. But the short nutshell is they won't tell us. So is that a plausible theory? Quite possibly, because one of the other emails that I uncovered in this release actually talks about that. This was in the beginning of this year in 2021. So we're talking about a month and a half or so after that OIIR weekly update that we just talked about. This was from Randy Cruz. He was the senior advisor to the administrator at NASA HQ. There's been a lot of media discussion lately about UFOs, supported by leaked footage, photos, etc. of things in low Earth orbit or well within Earth's atmosphere. I imagine at some point NASA gets approached to validate and utilize our technologies / capabilities to monitor and or analyze some of these claims. Who at NASA does this? So I'll let you guys read the rest of the emails by yourself. They go back and forth. Essentially, nobody's doing it at NASA. And there is a very much an interesting document that I forgot to make a slide for, and I just realized it. And so I'm live and I can't stop the video. I'll find a way to bring it up. But that said, you can go through the string, and again, they're just saying nobody researches UAPs to their knowledge, and so essentially it was kind of a dead end. So is this showing why the UAPTF reached out? Quite possibly. But what's also interesting is 6+ weeks had passed and nobody told the senior advisor to the administrator that they already reached out a month and a half or 2 months prior. So, you know, it's a possibility, but it's not solidified yet. There could be other reasons for them reaching out, which we'll talk about. The other thing, too, that I think people kind of forget in this is that although NASA has some very powerful instrumentation, and they've got some great sensors and so on, so does the DoD. And through the NRO spy satellites that we know of, and those that I'm sure we don't, my guess, and I wouldn't bet money on it, but my guess is they would have instrumentation and sensors up there that have more coverage than the ISS, better coverage, more sensitive technology, and better technology. That's just a guess. But I would say that it's great that the UAP Task Force wanted to enlist NASA, if that was the reason. All the more better to get more pieces on the chessboard and play with as much as you can. But in the same respect, it's the Department of Defense with access to the entire intelligence community, which again falls back on some really powerful satellites and systems that have been up there for decades and could probably read the lettering on my shirt through my window from space, let alone the ISS, systems that probably can't do that. So I think the DoD has those resources. I could absolutely be mistaken on that, but it just seems weird that they would say, okay, NASA, we need your help on this. I don't think they need it at all. And it clearly, by the writing of it, wasn't NASA's request. Now, that public version of the report, this is what's interesting. NASA wasn't mentioned. That was also another interesting part, was that in the very beginning, they go over a ton of different agencies that they dealt with that played a role in the report. Those that the task force or anybody else reached out to and said, hey, we need your help on this. Hey, what do you have? Navy sends over stuff. Well, Navy's in there. National Reconnaissance Office is in there. So my guess is they were using some of the technology there, just like I went over. NASA, not. So again, one of those question marks, why would you include NASA in this? And that essentially remains a little bit of a question mark because they won't talk about it. Here is the official statement, all of it. I'll read it to you from top to bottom, and we'll break down a few things. This is from our friend Susan Goff, by the way. I know some of you just rolled your eyes. However, when I sought after a comment of some kind when I got these documents, I immediately did that because I knew that was my next story. So I was trying desperately to that's why I was late in the day, trying desperately to finish on Friday the second story that I dropped then, knowing this was going to be my next one for this week, or I was hoping this week. And so I reached out to NASA, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Navy, and of course the Department of Defense, which is Susan Goff. I had my fingers crossed that even though the Navy likely would not respond, ODNI would likely not respond, Susan Goff would, it's a crapshoot, who knows. And then with NASA, I was hoping they would. That's the one that I wanted. Well, she coordinated with NASA, as you'll see here in the statement, and spoke for everybody. So we can now add NASA to the list when it comes to UAP-related issues that Susan Goff is now fielding. Before that, it was still a hefty list, but NASA wasn't on it as far as I was aware, but here we go. During the course of its work, the UAPTF has reached out to organizations across DoD, the intelligence community, and the U.S. government. The list of organizations included in the UAP report to Congress were the ones who provided specific input in the preparation of the report. It was not a comprehensive list of all organizations which the UAPTF has contacted in the course of its work. For security reasons, we will not detail the contributions of specific organizations to the UAPTF's work, nor the areas discussed with every organization as part of the UAPTF's investigations. It's worth noting, however, that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration is an organization with broad scientific responsibilities, including atmospheric research, etc. Such information is vital to fully understanding the environment in which Navy aviators operate and the condition that may have been present during any particular observation. For your information, the above was coordinated with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So they're not talking, but they do reinforce the theory that potentially NASA's playing a role because of their instrumentation. But if true, why didn't they contribute to the 144 cases that the UAPTF had investigated for that report? Because again, NRO is on there, but if they reached out to NASA, they really weren't coordinated. Was it a mistake? Well, I'll let you guys again decide that. Now, one thing that I want to point out to you, if you didn't catch it, was this line: such information is vital to fully understanding the environment in which Navy aviators operate. What's odd is the Navy again. Where's the Air Force? Now, for a lot of months, even a year plus, everybody was thinking that the Air Force wasn't included. But if you picked up on it in the report in November of last year, the Air Force adopted the same mechanism that the Navy established in March the year prior. So a little late to the game, but they have had now procedures set up. So why is it that the DoD is still essentially just highlighting the Navy? Was that a mistake? Is Freud coming out? Did she slip on something that the Air Force just still does not have anything to do with this? Or is it because the Air Force does have something to do with it? I don't have an answer to that. But again, it's just another interesting juxtaposition that the Air Force is involved, that the Air Force has this mechanism, according to the UAPTF. We don't know how many of the 144 cases there are, but they're involved. We know that because it's in writing. So I wanted to point that out to you guys. Something else that I'm surprised that more people don't talk about. I put this in one of my original videos about the report, but I want to do it again. A lot of people think the Air Force has been silent, and you're absolutely right. But what we didn't realize when the report was still issued, when the public report, the UAP report, this preliminary assessment, was first published, it was authored by a United States Air Force Major General. It doesn't say that, but it gives his title. So I drilled down on this part here, the ODNI National Intelligence Manager for Aviation. I'll read the whole line. ODNI prepared this report for the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Services Committee. UAP Task Force and the ODNI National Intelligence Manager for Aviation drafted this report with input from, and then they list everybody. Well, we read right past that and just go, oh, ODNI. Well, it's probably just somebody in there that, got a job or, was promoted. No, that position is held by Major General Daniel L. Simpson from the United States Air Force. So even though the military branch has been completely mum this entire time, they write or co-write the report? Come on. What's the meaning of that? Now, I don't have speculation for you. I mean, I have a little bit of my own in my head, but I'm not going to give you any just simply because I'm open. I'm open to this one because that military agency has been eerily quiet, not just kind of quiet, but like silent. And yet they co-authored a UAP report. That military branch that we thought just didn't care or give two hoots about UAPs, yep, they co-authored it with the UAPTF. Go figure. So the Air Force is involved. Now, I want to throw some other speculation out there for you guys. Now, I wish I had like some cool graphic, because I am very fact-based and nuts and bolts and documentation driven. But I like to have fun too and speculate, and it's just speculation. What I'm about to do is just that. So put your sirens up, speculation on what could be in the classified report. And even though NASA was not listed in the public report as being or playing a role in any of that, it is quite possible that the 144 cases that we know about is not everything. Meaning, what if the classified version talked about the 288 reports that they actually investigated, but only in the public report profiled 144? In a classified setting, they start pulling in other realms, let's say space, instead of just military training ranges. What if they did that? That's a possibility. And then NASA would play a role in that. In the article that I wrote, we do have quite a few different links, or I have quite a few different links, because we have quite a few different stories that have appeared over the years of UFOs being taken by cameras on the International Space Station. Some are kind of hokey and I think are a stretch. Others are pretty interesting. So I kind of linked to what I felt was a little bit more interesting. Very much may have a plausible explanation. But my point is the phenomena is very similar, shall we say. Craft moving at high speed, physical dimensions, various shapes, doing maneuvers that kind of defy what we know of in space, let alone here on Earth. So could it be that NASA maybe played a role in other cases that are still hidden in a classified setting? That's a possibility. Again, just speculation, fun food for thought. But this is where the semantics do play a role. I think people overly use that the government is playing word games. Not all the time, but sometimes they do. And quite possibly there are more cases than the 144 here that were referenced. And quite possibly X amount of those stayed in classified settings, because that would fit in the explanation that ODNI gave me on why the information was classified. And that would be sources and methods. So that would actually fit. If the source was an International Space Station camera or even a spy satellite or whatever it may be, and NASA is operating in that essentially that vicinity, then that is a method of how that they have obtained that material and could potentially play a role in why it was classified. So again, just a little bit of food for thought. But here's a breakdown from the report. 144 reports originated from U.S. government sources. 80 reports involved observation with multiple sensors. That's the public version. Again, maybe there's more in the classified setting. This was Susan Goff's portion. The list of organizations included in the UAP report to Congress were the ones who provided specific input in the preparation of the report. So that's where semantics could play a role. She's referencing the public report. So because I was, so that's why she was addressing it. That's where semantics can play a role, because the list that were consulted with in the classified version could potentially be different. The unclassified preliminary assessment and classified annex are substantively consistent, and the key conclusions are the same in both. Essentially, what they're saying is the conclusions are the same. This was given to me by ODNI. So again, that supports it. They could have 9,000 cases in there. As long as they are consistent, which it sounds like they are, then what they're telling us is still the truth. So that's where semantics can potentially play a role in all of this. And that's something that I aim, and there's a video with much more detail on this, I aim to get as much as that of that classified report as possible. And it does look very promising, and it does look like something that may happen hopefully sooner than later. So we'll be able to answer some of that fun speculation. And I'm interested, obviously, in your speculation as well, which feel free to post some comments down there. But it is fun to think about that is there this other layer of UAP cases and records and so on that essentially could include NASA. So on the public side, not so much. The classified side, quite possibly. When they talk about the conclusions, there was no conclusion section in that report. So I assume they mean these highlighted parts here. So again, I won't read all of that to you guys, but just wanted to kind of show you, I think that that's what they mean, that it's consistent. So what they concluded here and essentially what they want us to believe that they've concluded is true in a classified setting as well. But we don't know what all the extra fluff could be. So I finished that a little bit. Oh, you know what? That's what I remembered. Let me see if I can quickly pull up here a slide that I forgot to make. And these were, okay, so see if that works. Good. Sorry, I'm kind of doing this on the fly. I totally forgot to show you guys this. This was one of the emails that came in, which I think is pretty interesting and also paves the way for kind of a fun, very quick story about FOIA. So this was one of the other emails. The topic was National Academy Review of UAP Report Data/Findings. This was sent to Dr. Z from Bhavya Lal, who is part of NASA. And she says, do you think this would be a good idea? And again, referencing that National Academy Review. I can assume that that's the National Academy of Sciences. So we'll see. And you can see here the entire page is completely redacted. And it goes into the second page, which I can't really figure out why that little top line would be redacted. We know who it was from. So not really sure there. But regardless, that's the email. And this happened June 10th, 2021, which was ironically the date range that I had to cut off my request. Because when a request is processed, you have to put a date range. And when I had filed this on June 7th, it took them until June 10th to reach out to me and say, hey, we need a time frame, which to me is kind of silly because it's essentially, you know, I didn't want to put a time frame. So I did the day that Dr. Z started working at NASA to that day. So their cutoff was that day, June 10th, 2021. And you can see that's when this email was sent. Now, what does that mean? Why is that interesting? Well, simply because there's more to this story. And this exemption here, B5, is essentially what they call the deliberative process. And the deliberative process essentially is them bantering about either making decisions. You see that a lot with lawyers, so on and so forth. But the definition is broad. And in the FOIA realm, in the FOIA arena, we on my side call it essentially the exempt it if you want to statute. If they want to exempt it, they can put B5 on it and you can't really fight it. And so this has been a very abused FOIA exemption over the years, because if this is a proposal, then maybe they could get away with B5. But we're not sure, And so my lesson for you is this. Number one is always pay attention to the redaction, because you find out why it's being redacted, but also pay attention to how you can fight it, and always appeal. That is always my advice to everybody, is to appeal everything. So I will absolutely appeal this. So that was an on-the-fly graphic. I'm sorry, I was going to integrate that into the PowerPoint presentation. I literally was doing that PowerPoint presentation before I clicked go live, right up until about 30 seconds, because I was trying to finish it and so on. So I'm sorry about that. Bricktop, thank you. And your message, thank you for everything you do, John. Like Lou said, we need 15 of you. Very cool of not only Luis Elizondo to say that, but your support of the channel as well. So tell you what, I have a little bit of time. This ended a little bit sooner than I thought. Let me go ahead and switch over. If you guys have some questions, let me put that on screen real quick. I think, anyway, we should be able to do this. I wasn't planning on it, so let me start the software. You guys should be able to call in. This may fail miserably, who knows? But I think that issue we had on the last live stream is all fixed up at this point. So that should be good. So if you guys have any questions, please, by all means, post them in the chat room or give me a call. Let me look at the chat room before I go. First, I saw, what about the 23-minute footage? This is a very common question that I keep getting asked. And I believe that this is rooted to Luis Elizondo hinting that this footage is there, which I think is great. But the problem with tracking that down is I can't file a FOIA request and say, give me the really cool 23-minute footage that will knock my socks off. You can't do that. You need context. Uh-oh, I did something. Sorry about that. I started getting feedback. I apologize if that fed through. But you need context. You need something to request. You need something to go to either the Navy, the DOD, was it the Air Force? And some of you may have some of those details. I haven't listened to every podcast that this was referenced on by Mr. Elizondo, but as far as I'm aware, there really is no context. Rather, it's the idea that a 23-minute video exists. I think that's cool. I think that's great, and it very well may exist. The problem is trying to get it. You need more, and that's what's very, very difficult in some of this. So, I'd love to get it, and I'd love to do it. If anybody out there has some kind of context for me, please, by all means. But at this point, it's a little bit tough to do because there's no context, and with FOIA, you need it. Let me close the thought, though, by saying this. I do have open cases that if a 23-minute video does exist and it was utilized by the UAP Task Force, I have cases that should yield it. I'll leave it at that. But a specific request for that specific video, it's very, very tough. Any relation between Skinwalker Ranch and New Mexico cattle mutilations in FOIA? Rubens Zimbres? I apologize if I have that pronounced incorrectly, Rubens. Great question. I talked about a FOIA request that came in. And you know what? I forgot to take the text messages off. I'm sorry, guys. I will do my best to try and check the text too, but this was kind of on the fly. I wasn't planning on doing some questions. But back to your question, Rubens. The cattle mutilations in FOIA, the only documentation that I've been able to come up with officially was the cattle mutilation documents through the FBI. And in that, no, there's no mention of any kind of Skinwalker Ranch or anything around even Utah, if memory serves. I don't think that there was anything there. So the short way of answering your question, no. The idea that Skinwalker Ranch played a role in a government program is a big question mark for me and a big concern. I know there's a lot of information out there, a lot of claims. Bass operated Skinwalker Ranch during the time of OSAP, and there's a lot of ideas that he was there doing, essentially paranormal research for the DIA. I have long held a problem with that story and that narrative. I have been pushing hard for 3 years plus now on whether or not evidence actually exists. At this point, though, nothing has been produced. But I will say, in fairness, the agency that would have it, the DIA, my cases have been open for years. So will there be a Skinwalker and cattle mutilations connection there? Maybe, and I'm open to it. But sadly, until then, sadly, there's nothing. Any thoughts on the 2019 Bainbridge Island Tic Tac event, photographed just 10 days before Fravor's event, and how it may have been a part of this UAP report? To be honest with you, I don't, and I'm sorry, Anonymous Rex, I don't have anything eloquent to add to that, at least not yet. So great question, but no, I wouldn't have anything to add to it. I'm always on the hunt for documentation and confirmation and stuff like that. And I know a shout out to my friend Dave Beatty, who's a brilliant researcher, investigator. I know he's done a lot of FOIA work, kind of drilling into the Nimitz and related military encounters like that. So I don't want to speak for him, but I would definitely say, if you don't know who that is, look him up. I think he does great work, and he really asks a lot of great questions. So, yeah, that's that. Let me see here. It's quite possible the phone is not working, so I apologize. That's another one that came in today. Let me go ahead and restart this. That's another one that came in today here from Boston's Buddha. I always love all the different handles. Can you get radar data through FOIA for American Airlines incident? Yes, you can get radar data. It gets tricky. Radar data, a lot of times, and it depends a little bit on the event, on whether or not it will be saved or destroyed. Now, I've talked a lot about records retention on this channel lately, and it is kind of a snoozy topic, but here it is again, where this plays a role in why that snoozy topic is very important, because it shows how long records will be retained and how long they should hold them. And a lot of times radar data and even air traffic control recordings, stuff like that, are deleted pretty quick. They don't get saved. So with a lot of these encounters, when it comes to airlines and stuff like that, you need to really be Johnny on the spot to go get that information before it's destroyed. Because let's say you try and get something from an encounter 5 years ago, the chances are you'll dig that up. No. So it is open. Radar data from privately run airports, that gets into a whole nother ball game, but privately run airports are essentially not subject to FOIA. So you really run into unique situations for whatever case that it might be. Let me see what else we got here. Any upcoming promises to FOIA private companies receiving government money for private projects? Any upcoming promises to FOIA private companies? ABG, I'm going to be honest and say I don't quite follow that question. But if I think it's where you're going, can you FOIA private companies? No, you cannot. When money goes to a private corporation, and this is a big misconception, and I do hope that I'm addressing at least part of your question here, but when when money from the government goes to a private contractor, obviously you cannot FOIA, let's say, a Lockheed Martin. But when a government contractor gets a contract, they have what are called deliverables. So that money has to translate back into a work for hire, whatever it may be. Are they building an airplane? Are they doing research? Are they taking photos? Whatever it is that they were contracted for, those are deliverables that they deliver back. So if you really dig in, you can't shield a program entirely, because the moment that private contractor gives that material back, that would essentially be public domain, in the sense that it's FOIA-able. Whether or not it's classified or exempt, another conversation, but that becomes FOIA-able. Prime example would be OSAP. OSAP was the DIA's program that was farmed out to Bigelow Aerospace's subsidiary, known as BASS. Could I FOIA BASS? No. Could I FOIA Bigelow Aerospace? No. But could I FOIA what they did for the money they got? Yes. So anything that they transferred back, and as we know, it is 38 reports called DIRDs, nicknamed DIRDs. They're Defense Intelligence Research Documents, I think they are. What happens is that those DIRDs that go back, all FOIA-able. And so those are starting to come out. And so those are starting to, via FOIA, come out. And that was work done by a private contractor, by authors that were privately contracted, that are not government employees. So there's a big misconception on whether or not you could just totally hide something. And that's not true. Grants are different topics. Of course, grants, you don't need to turn anything back. So then, sure, if they grant money to something, then you can't FOIA that, and essentially it's hidden. But anything of note that we would really want to get our hands on and FOIA and so on, that's open. And that's something that, again, may be a little bit more limited. You might not be able to get every email, but you will get those deliverables. And let's face it, those deliverables, the final reports, quarterly reports, would all be what we're looking for anyway. And then they also have a manager within the U.S. government. In the OSAP case, we know this from the leaked documents. His name is James Lakatsky. I've kind of dodged saying his name a lot, but it's kind of pointless now. So James Lakatsky was the program manager within DIA. He communicated with BASS and essentially the OSAP team. Again, can I FOIA BASS? No. Can I FOIA DIA and James Lakatsky? Absolutely. And so all of that material then becomes FOIA-able. Prime example and proof of that would be, for anybody who wants to see it, go to theblackvault.com and search for Bigelow Aerospace. And once you pop up the search results, you'll see that I got Bigelow Aerospace emails through FOIA. Why? Because they were communicating with the FAA, trying to get BASS into the FAA manuals for them to be the go-to agency for UFO reports. So I have all the communications back and forth. Not because I FOIA'd Bigelow Aerospace, but because I did it on the FAA side. So there are definitely ways to get around that. Is Corey Good a Balland? I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. I don't follow Corey Good stuff. I know who that is. I do believe that it is bunk, and we'll leave it at that. I mean, I find nothing of interest there. The only thing that has intrigued me, and I believe I know why, is that he had two of those original DIRDs. I think it was two of the original DIRDs on his website like a year or two before we kind of found out about him. I believe he was given those at a conference that he was lecturing at. I don't think that there's any kind of cool story. They were unclassified. So somebody showed up at a conference, from what I understand through digging around. No, that does not come from Corey Good. I've never spoken to him as far as I know. I think I did reach out to him, though, on this particular issue, but that doesn't come. That just comes from digging around and asking questions. I believe that that's how he came across them. They were unclassified. He scanned them, put them online, and there they sat. How about George Adamski? Well, that's always a fun one. 1950s contactee era. They're just fun stories, and the videos, though, are very hokey to me. I don't put them high on my list at all of being legitimate. I mean, who knows? Maybe they are, but I laugh only because I that's an era that I hate trashing. Like if someone like Adamski came out now with those types of quality videos, and I mean, yeah, I would blast him and go, why the heck are we wasting our time on this? This needs to stop, and I'd go into defensive mode on the ridiculous nature of it. But for me, I love that history. Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, but I love the 1950s era contactees that, yeah, were probably either lying through their teeth or their cheese slid way off of their cracker and they were bonkers and they really thought that they were riding around the universe with people from Venus. But regardless of it, it's just such a cool era in history. Like, what am I going to do? Trash somebody from, 70 plus years ago? It is what it is. I think they're fun, but I don't put them in that type of a, category that I think I'm going to do a video next week and go, okay, guys, like I really think Adamski's real, or Billy Myers, another one I think is a complete hoax. And this is my periodic reminder for all of those. By all means, send an email to Billy Myers' American representative, I think he calls himself, Michael Horn. He absolutely hates me, and he goes on these gigantic tirades about me simply because, and he makes it personal too. It's rather humorous. This is my periodic reminder. Write him all an email and say that I am blasting to the world Billy Myers a hoax, and watch what happens. It's fireworks. He gets all worked up. It'll give him fodder to attack me for like 2 years, and then it'll die down. And somebody asks me again, I'll say it. I'm telling you, he gets really into it. It's you can't help but just kind of smile and laugh. But those are all in the same category for me, not anything valuable. Question, have you seen the declassified documents from Australia and New Zealand that seem to align with the United States Air Force taking a lead on incidents within the Five Eyes countries? Well, the Australian documents that kind of made a riff here in the last month or so, ironically, I've had them on the Black Vault for quite a few years, and I don't want to take credit for being the one to bringing them to the world. They were actually out years before that. So have I seen them? Yes. Have I studied them? No. Are they interesting? Always. I mean, these types of documents, when they come out from various countries and essentially supporting the fact that this phenomena is real, we have no idea what it is, and that's what these Australian documents essentially talk about. All of that is incredibly valuable, but am I ready to do a 2-hour presentation on it? No, but at least I wanted to give you a general answer there that it still is a fascinating aspect, that this isn't unique to America. This isn't unique to this country only. It is a worldwide phenomena where you have the UK government with a stack of documents that have come out, obviously the Australian government, the Canadian government, all sorts of stuff is out there. So I think it really reinforces the importance of this topic and the fact that it is a worldwide phenomena, whatever that may be. Balland, I'm scrolling through here. It's so hard to follow some of these, but Balland, I'm sorry, I don't know that word. I'm going to feel dumb when I get off and look it up, so I apologize for that. UFO Twitter battle royale between UFO Joe and Michael Horn. Who wins? Matthew Riot, you've been around for a while on this channel. I really appreciate your support. Love the humor. I personally, I don't know if UFO Joe believes in Meyer or not. So I don't want to speak for him, or I know some of the things he does believe in, and I'm sadly not on the same page when it comes to UFO Joe. By the sounds of it, it sounds like maybe he is anti-Meyer too. So if that's the case, good for Joe, because he and I actually see eye to eye on that one. Who would win? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, on that battle royale. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I think Michael Horn doesn't have ears when it comes to debates. And I don't mean that totally disrespectfully, but what I mean by that is the fact that he doesn't listen. He won't listen to you. And so does that constitute a win or a loss? Who knows? He just won't do the battle royale. He will just believe that he's the winner before he ever steps into the ring. And by him discounting everyone else, I mean, he literally 100% discounts anybody's experience because Billy Meyer's the real deal. And joking aside, because you can tell I'm probably, pretty obvious here with my snarkiness. I've endured years of that guy writing blogs and doing all sorts of stuff. And so, quite frankly, I really don't care about the snarkiness. But joking aside, what I will say is that is a prime example of things when they get scary. Not because Michael Horn is dangerous. That's not what I'm saying. He's harmless. He's just a loud mouth about all of this. But where it gets dangerous is when you essentially preach about a topic like this. And in the case of Billy Meyer, he has these prophecies. And essentially you're creating a movement, a religious, spiritual movement based on bunk. And when you do that, it gets very dangerous. You know, it gets very Heaven's Gate cultish. And that's what I see from not only the Michael Horn corner, because I have tried to communicate with him, and in response to trying to communicate over the years, he'll send you like hundreds and hundreds of pages of prophecies, you know, and that's what he calls them. And that's where it gets scary, because there's no proof to any of that, but you're essentially enlisting people to your movement and to your belief system. You're creating this religion. And I see it on Twitter as well. And I don't look, I've said it publicly before. I'm not here to trash any, anybody who believes in this kind of stuff, but I'm sorry, you see it on Twitter also. And you see these people that are having these experiences that they, if you're lucky, will share with you. They won't prove it, but if you're lucky, they'll share with you. And you see these beings that appeared to them, and they have special messages and so on and so forth. I mean, I read that story, you know, I mean, it's the Bible, but in a different way. And I'm sure I'll get hate mail for this, but that's very dangerous. And history proves that that's very dangerous. And if somebody is in contact with an extraterrestrial species and they have some kind of message for humanity, I do believe that they would then be intelligent enough not to do it with some dude living in where's Billy Meyer, Switzerland, and that's your catalyst, that's your funnel to all of humanity. That guy, like, why wouldn't you do it with world leaders or anything like that? Because if you're intelligent enough to get here and intelligent enough to want to teach a very infantile species like our own, why would you do that with some guy that lives in the middle of like the Swiss Alps or wherever, you know, he is? I don't know where he is. But regardless, like, he's not out there, you know, preaching to high heaven. He's got his, you know, people. So, you know, not to go off on a tangent there, but I think that again, that's where it gets very, very dangerous. And I think we should all absolutely be careful. So I'll move on from that. But yeah, just be mindful about what we all see out there, because there is a lot, and that's where it gets uncomfortable. Sonia's News, thank you so much for that. Do you ever feel like giving up on trying to get to the bottom of the UFO phenomenon? Well, all the time. It's been 25 years, and it's frustrating. I can't begin to tell you the frustration that you have to go through to research it. Obviously, my forte is government documents. There's a lot of frustration that goes into that. There's a lot of challenges that you have to overcome. But after 25 years and a lot of times where you just go, you know what, I'm going to have a beer, forget it. You know, just shut everything off, close the website down, and I'm done. When I was very young, I vowed to myself that if there is a cover-up, which I feel that now it's easily proven, but if there's a cover-up about this specific topic, what they will want me to do is give up. They'll just want me to go away. And so I vowed when I was really young that if I was to stick with it, I wouldn't give up. And so even though you have those thoughts all the time, because it does get frustrating, and some of these stories, you know, that circulate, and you want to just kind of, you know, reach through the computer monitor and strangle somebody, you just can't. You know, it comes with the territory, and it's something that keeps me driven. And in one respect, it's so frustrating. In the other end, it's so motivating to want to be able to bring more information out, verifiable, fact-based evidence. And I said this last week, I'll say it again. The government and documents and what I call my forte, my focus, is not the end-all be-all. It's just not. But in my world, in my opinion, for me personally, it's the foundation we can build upon. And that is what I want to build, is that foundation that then paves the way for all these other stories. Do they come our way and then just fall to pieces when you try and fact check it? Or do they come our way, sit on the foundation, and actually stand the true test of questions and being asked questions and pursuing that? So do I want to give up? No. Do you feel like it sometimes? Yeah. So great question. What do you think about Dr. Stephen Greer and his information? Well, that's the show. Good night, everyone. Great question. Very common one. I personally very much disagree with much of what Dr. Greer says. I want to start with a positive and say what he did many years ago with the Disclosure Project and bringing forward witnesses and so on and so forth to the forefront and getting a lot of publicity and media interest. All of that was incredibly valuable. I will never take that away from him. I wish that he would have vetted some of the witnesses better, some of them, but other ones were incredibly strong and ones that will live on for many, many, many years when it comes to this story and UFOs and legend and lore. But I don't agree with a lot of what he says. I don't agree with his stance. I think he's coming out with guns blazing when he doesn't have to. If he feels certain ways, I believe that he should show evidence. And if he really does have the keys to the universe and he can summon UFOs and teach us all to have close encounters of the fifth kind and communicate or meditate or whatever, it shouldn't have such a hefty price tag. I don't agree with that. So, I don't believe aliens are coming here to speak to him in order for him to capitalize on it and we can go camping as long as our checkbooks are fat enough. I don't agree with any of that. So, with respect, if it works for him, great. But I acknowledge the contributions he did many years ago, but I actually separate him then from him really now. Even though he was dabbling in that then, I feel that he's definitely shifted in the sense that it's more of a focus with that. And, his documentaries, now he's coming out with guns blazing, making these silly accusations. Look, I'm skeptical too, but have I ever, said anything like what he is recently saying? I think it's ridiculous. So, hopefully that answered your question there. All right. So, these super chats are fantastic, guys. Thank you so incredibly much. I can only do a couple more, simply because daddy duty is about to kick in. So let me take this one. Do you have any opinion on Jeremy Corbell, how he operates and the footage he has released? I'm trying to learn who to trust in the UAP community. Well, here's great advice, and this isn't against Jeremy. Don't trust anyone. And I'm on that list. And the reason why I say that is don't think everything that's given to you is gospel. Wait for the evidence to be presented, which is why sometimes these videos get so long, because when I present something, I'll give you that evidence. And that's what I want to achieve. I get questioned a lot, and that's okay. We need to do that. It doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't offend me. As long as people are respectful, that's what we need to do. We need to do that with everybody, Jeremy included. We need to question, why is he the conduit for this footage? How does he have that access? Is it because he's lucky? Is it because he's well known? Okay, great. Those types of questions, when we get the answers, that's what we need. Do I wish that there was more information if he's sitting on it and I don't know that for a fact? Of course, I wouldn't hesitate to say that. I wish that we would just get access to everything. If it's there, great. If it's still being vetted, then that's credit to him. Even though I'm not an advocate for leaked material, what I will say about Jeremy, and this is to his benefit, and I've complimented him before, and I do consider him a friend, by the way. I would tell him this to his face. His stuff checks out when it comes to the leaked material. So there's value in that to me. The Pentagon will go on the record with me and other agencies as well, that the material he's coming out with is genuine, utilized by the UAP Task Force, is a Navy asset, so to speak, and is essentially real. Whether or not it's unidentified, some of that material they won't comment on, but that's, again, a different story. Regardless, though, it's real. That checks out to me, and I respect that. That makes me pay attention. Even though I hate people who tout anonymous sources, I've posted this on Twitter. When Jeremy says he's coming out with something, my ears perk up, just because it's him. I don't like the anonymous sources, but I understand it because it checks out. It's the anonymous sources that don't check out that are the ones that I harp on. So I've never said the use of anonymous sources is bad if it checks out. But most of the time it never does. And so to Jeremy's credit, it checks out with these videos and photographs through George Knapp. So credit to them both. They have strong contacts. They're giving us stuff, and the Pentagon's acknowledging it. But I won't stop asking questions on that because there's still a lot to be said. With these super chats, man, the chat, when I do all of the social networks, there's over 600 now, and it's dipped just simply because generally it dips off by the end when I'm just doing questions and stuff. Here's one I didn't. The Unlikely Potato Emergency Beer Fund, one of my favorite contributions for the day. Thank you for that, the Unlikely Potato. After Daddy Duty goes away, I will use that and buy a beer. No, all of the joking aside, all of the super chats that come in, 100% goes in. I don't buy myself dinner or beer, although I like the sentiment. It does go back, but I'll have a beer nonetheless. So I appreciate that. I think that that's all the super chats. There's still lots of questions. Look, guys, I love doing this, as you can tell. I'll figure out the phone thing simply because I wasn't planning on doing it, so I never tested it to make sure it was online. So I apologize for that, but hopefully got to most of the not only super chats, but the text questions in the chat room, and I appreciate your time very much. At the last, very much as the last time. It's just so much. It's so overwhelming to see this support on the live shows, and I can't thank you enough. I truly, truly appreciate that. But it makes it a little bit challenging to get to everybody, and trust me, it's not by choice. I'd love to sit here and do it all night long. Magician Joshua Logan, thank you so much for that super sticker support. And thank you all for listening or watching. The biggest help that you can give this channel beyond the super chat would obviously be a thumbs up and making sure you're subscribed to this channel. Turn the notifications on, or click the bell, as the kids say, and then share that video, share this video, whatever you might be watching. It is a huge help to me. So with that being said, thank you so much again. Really do appreciate it. I can't wait for the next story, the next video, the next interview, because I love bringing it to you. Thank you so much. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we'll see you next time.